On the morning commute train. Amidst the crowd of people heading to work, I was captivated by a woman. Her beauty was one thing, but what really caught my eye was something hanging from her skirt. I couldn't look away. Because hanging from her skirt was, "My name is Mike. I'm just an ordinary office worker, or so I'd like to think." No, that's not right. I'm just an ordinary employee at a company with terrible working conditions. Overtime is expected at my job. My boss yells at me every day, and I work from early morning until the last train. Of course, I've thought about changing jobs. But I'm so exhausted. I can't make a move. Before I know it, the weekend is over. And today is Monday, and it's raining. It is unlikely that many people who are in high spirits on a day like this. I climbed the stairs with a heavy heart. Today, as usual, my boss will probably be sarcastic with me and push me to work hard anyway. Just thinking about it makes my steps heavier. But the train on the opposite platform is about to depart. A crowd of people rushes past me. It's a common sight, but one man caught my eye. Dressed in a black suit, he looked like an ordinary office worker. But there was something white stuck to his shoulder. Is that a tissue? He probably used it to wipe off the rain quickly when he got wet. Come on, I thought, no matter how close to the train's departure time you were, you should still check it properly. I had to chuckle. Because I know how much he didn't want to miss the train. Being late will get you in trouble. Whether it's a terrible company or a decent one, that's the same. I just hope he notices the tissue on his shoulder eventually. With that thought, I boarded my train. Since my office is in a rural area, the rush hour isn't too bad. Although the seats are taken and I have to stand, it's not as packed as the trains in the big cities. The only good thing about my current job is avoiding those packed trains. Well, there's nothing else good about it than that. Today, as usual, the train is filled with office workers like me, students, and well-dressed women who might have the day off. Every time I arrived at the station, people would come and go. When I have seen this situation several times, I was captivated by a woman. She had long, shiny black hair and silky, clear white skin. Wearing a neatly fitted suit, and she had a charismatic presence. She stood out so much that people couldn't help but glance at her. Her skirt was so short that at first, I thought it was a mini skirt, but she was just so tall that it looked really short. She drew attention in many ways. Not just me, but many people glanced at her and then looked away. Staring at others is not something you should do, after all. Such a beautiful person naturally draws attention. Even I was captivated. But staring for too long is rude, so I tried to look away, but I saw something swaying in my peripheral vision. What is that? I looked again at the woman's skirt, and there was something white hanging from it. What is that? A long, thin white thing. Wait, is that a tissue? I remembered the tissue guy who had rushed past me earlier. But it's not like the woman is wet. Wait a minute. Did she get it in the restroom? As soon as I thought of this, I felt like I had seen something I shouldn't have. I mean, using the restroom in a way that gets tissue paper stuck to your skirt, there's only one explanation for that. But how could she not notice? Well, it's not directly on her skin, and it's hanging from the back of her skirt, so it's hard to see. And she's holding a bag and looking at her phone. There's no way she could notice. But wait. The tissue occasionally brushes against her plump thigh as the train sways. And she keeps checking her skirt. How can she not notice it? Is she oblivious? Or is the tissue just really hard for her to see? Every time it brushes against her thigh, she reaches to scratch, but she barely misses the tissue. It's extremely frustrating to watch. It's a used tissue, so I really hope she notices it herself. But she doesn't notice it. The situation was so frustrating that I finally spoke up. Excuse me. What? She looked up at me, surprised. Of course, she would be cautious being approached by a stranger. But I was too embarrassed to consider her feelings. There's something on your skirt. My skirt. Oh no. She hurriedly checked her skirt and finally noticed the tissue. Wait a second. Upon closer inspection, it doesn't look like tissue. It looks more rigid. Is that a bandage? Sorry, it looks like the tape holding the cold compress came off. Thanks for letting me know. What? Tape. I was surprised again. It looked like a bandage, but apparently, there's a special large tape used to secure cold compress that I didn't know about. The material is like gauze to avoid moisture buildup, so at a glance, it looked like a bandage. So what I had been looking at was, not a tissue, but a cold compress that had come loose. I was so embarrassed I felt like my face was on fire. But I had mistaken the cold compress she had on for medical treatment as a tissue, and worse. I thought it was a used tissue of that kind and panicked on my own. I was so embarrassed by my own wild imagination that I wanted to crawl into a hole. Not noticing at my age is embarrassing, I'm not a child. But she was blushing and fidgeting too. It doesn't look good, and having a cold compress with tape hanging from your skirt is pretty embarrassing too. An awkward silence fell between us. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I would have been humiliated if I went to work like this. No, it's nothing. Actually, I usually drive to work, but since I'm not used to commuting by train, I didn't notice. She mumbled, covering her face in embarrassment. I see, she was so focused on doing something out of the ordinary, so she didn't have time to take care of herself. Having such a beautiful woman thank me made me happy, and although it was embarrassing, I was glad I told her. She kept thanking me until we reached her stop, and finally, she smiled at me before getting off the train. Her bright, beautiful smile wiped away my pre-work negative feelings, but I knew I probably wouldn't see her again. It was just a lucky encounter today, a mere coincidence. At least that's what I thought, but a few days later, we would meet again. A few days later. What have you done? My boss was yelling at me louder than ever. Apparently, there was a mistake in a deal, and the client was furious. But the mistake wasn't mine. I had almost no involvement in the deal, and it was my boss who made the mistake in entering the wrong numbers on the documents. So this mistake was my boss's fault, but he was blaming me, making it seem like it was my error. If I tried to argue, it would just mean getting yelled at even more. I could only quietly say sorry. However, this time that was a bad mistake. Somehow, the news of the mistake reached the president. My boss took the opportunity to criticize my work ethic and performance, lowering my reputation drastically. I tried to explain, but it was too late. Mr. Johnson, the president, had already decided I was at fault and told me not to come back next month. Seriously? My boss was smirking, and I was instructed by Mr. Johnson to clean up the mess before leaving. I felt numb. I was so exhausted that I didn't even have the energy to feel anger or emptiness. Well, I had stayed at the office overnight and almost pulled an all-nighter. When you're too tired, you feel nothing. But the client doesn't care about that. Barely able to stand, I went to apologize to the client. And there. What? When I arrived, the person I faced in the reception room was that woman from the train. She introduced herself as Emily. Her clear skin and beautiful black hair still looked stunning. She had on slightly heavier makeup today, which suited her fair skin beautifully. But this isn't the time. I came to apologize. I'm terribly sorry for the trouble we've caused. You're Mike, right? But the person handling this transaction wasn't you. Shouldn't the person in charge be the one to apologize? She made a valid point. Her business card read manager, and it was clear Emily was competent. I hesitated, and she glanced down at the documents I handed her, seeming to understand something. Did you prepare these documents? Yes, I prepared part of the transaction documents as well. The documents you provided a while back were very clear. The other documents were poorly made, though. You seem quite capable. Emily pointed out that it was obvious from the documents that my boss had delegated part of the work to someone else. She had noticed the mistake was in the documents my boss had prepared. Your boss should be the one here, but it's pointless to expect that from a company that abandons its junior employees. This matter is settled since you brought sincere documentation. Also, you should consider switching jobs. Why not join us? What? We need someone who can prepare such thorough documents. No pressure, but if you're interested, contact me. Emily winked and pointed to a business card on the table. Was this headhunting? I was stunned, but I managed to say, "I'll consider it," and then left the reception room. I was going to quit my current job anyway. I thought about taking her offer, but I was too tired to think deeply. I just wanted to go home and rest. So, I didn't respond that day. But a few days later, I was treated like I didn't exist at my company, and that helped me move on. So I called Emily's number. 2 weeks later, I successfully switched jobs and joined Emily's company. I was in the same sales department as her. Emily was now my manager, and I was honestly very nervous about the new environment. But somehow, on my first day, my colleagues and seniors praised me a lot. "Wow, you're so fast at data entry. You already finished organizing the documents." Actually, I should say they were more shocked than praising me. The work I was given at the new company was about a third of what I used to handle. In the past, I had to compile massive amounts of data in a few hours or finish an enormous number of entries in an hour. I did that every day, and it was normal in that company, so I never realized how fast I actually was. Being praised made me happy, and when Emily said, I knew I made the right choice. I felt proud. I owe it all to Emily. I'm really grateful. The workload isn't heavy, everyone is kind, and no one yells. Plus, I can leave work on time. Even if I do work overtime, I get paid for it. It's like a dream. But, after a month, I encountered a problem. You see, I had forgotten how to spend my free time because I used to spend all my time at the office. Suddenly having free time left me bored. I wish I could find a hobby, but I'm not sure how to go about that. Today, too, I finished work on time, and now I'm wondering what to do. As I was pondering this, Mike, do you have any plans after this? Oh, no, I don't. Would you like to go out for dinner? You helped me on the train, remember? Emily smiled at me as she said this. I had no reason to refuse, so I gladly accepted her invitation. Since she commutes by car, she drove me to a restaurant a bit further from the station, and we chatted over dinner. Are you getting used to the work? Yes, thanks to you. I'm glad. I was a bit worried since I kind of forced you into this. Though we were having a casual conversation, I was incredibly nervous. This is Emily, after all. She even touched up her makeup, and her words, spoken through her full, soft lips, were so comforting. I was having dinner with an elegant and attractive woman. It would be strange not to be nervous. Thank you for inviting me to join the company back then. I should be thanking you. You've made work much easier. And, when you spoke to me on the train, I thought you were very kind. Emily shared her feelings from that day. It turns out she was on the train because her car was in the garage, being repaired after being involved in an accident. Fortunately, she only had a bruised leg, but the shock of being involved in an accident was great. And the other party's drunk driving caused delays in settling the case, which was stressful for her. People can be so selfish. I was really down. But then you spoke to me, and it made me happy. Even though it was a small thing. Being willing to help someone else. I thought you were a wonderful person. Emily blushed as she spoke. Seeing her embarrassed and blushing was so adorable that I turned red too. The contrast between her usual cool demeanor at work and this moment was striking. I know it's sudden and might seem strange, but you're very capable and considerate, and, popular among the female employees. Me? Yes. So, if I don't say it now, someone else might take you away. Emily fidgeted as she said this. Stop, I can't handle this. I think. Emily, you're very attractive. Mike. When I first saw you on the train, I thought you were incredibly beautiful. But after working with you, I realized you're not just beautiful on the outside, you're also kind and considerate. Oh, what am I saying? Unable to express my feelings properly, my words came out jumbled and embarrassing. However, Emily just laughed softly. Seeing her smile helped me regain some composure. I like you, Emily. Will you go out with me? I said, looking straight at her. Her face turned bright red, and she said, yes, please. And so, we started dating. We saw each other almost every day at work, and after work, we'd go out for dinner, or on our days off, we'd watch movies or go shopping together. Eventually, Emily started making me lunch, and before I knew it, we were living together. I commuted in the somewhat embarrassing way of riding in her car, but honestly, being able to talk with her during the drive wasn't bad at all. Of course, this meant our relationship became obvious, and after a year of dating, everyone at the office knew about us. Just to clarify, we kept our personal and professional lives separate, so no one said anything about it. Then, 2 years into our relationship, in the winter, on Christmas Day, I gave her an engagement ring as a present. I may not have a title yet, and I might be unreliable, but I promise to make you happy for the rest of our lives. It was my first time proposing. In the snowy night, she took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. "You'd better make me happy, or I'll be mad," she said. When she said that, I was so overjoyed I thought my heart would burst. I worked like crazy. I worked, and before I knew it, I was promoted to manager. It was thanks to the recommendations from many people. And then, Emily got pregnant and took maternity leave, eventually giving birth to a beautiful baby girl. Now, the once career-focused Emily is known around the neighborhood as a beautiful mom. I'm always worried about strange guys bothering my lovely wife and daughter, but they say mothers are strong, right? I reported a guy who tried to hit on me while I was with our child, she once said. Now, our daughter is 5 years old. She's a lively, mischievous girl, but she's growing up to be the most adorable girl in the world, just like her mother. Still, she's just a kid. When she came back from the restroom with tissue stuck on her clothes the other day, I spat out my tea I was drinking. Oh man. That monumental misunderstanding from back then is a dark memory I want to take to the grave, but I guess without it, I wouldn't have this life now. To protect this life, I need to keep working hard and take good care of Emily and our daughter. With renewed determination, I boarded the same train car where I first met Emily.